everybody, today I'm going to show you how to put any other kind of crank on an ISIS bottom bracket. This is my old 2018 Czar 26-inch that came with an ISIS bottom bracket, and I'm going to show you how to take out the ISIS bottom bracket and put on something else so that you can run Shimano cranks or SRAM cranks or some other kind of cranks. Okay, so if you've ever bought an Echo or a Czar or a GU or something, it came with an ISIS bottom bracket, which looks like this. ISIS spline interface. The bearings are pressed into the frame like this. To get them out, the ISIS bottom brackets have this little flange that sits up against the bearing. So all you have to do is knock out either side, and it'll come out. You can use your 3-pound persuader or hammer or whatever you feel like to knock one out, and it'll drive out one side of the bearings. And and then you can use the axle to drive out the other bearing. If you want to protect it, you can use a piece of wood, to knock it out, or you can use a rubber mallet to not damage your ISIS bottom bracket. But I don't think I'm ever going to reuse these. I have a pile of them, so I don't know. They don't get damaged. I knocked these out with the hammer, and they still look fine, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Okay, so once you got the bearings out, and you have a nice, smooth, beautiful, empty bottom bracket shell, we could drive in the new bearings, and these are Endura bearings. Where's the label? Yeah, and they're just regular MR2437, which is 24mm axle, 37mm on the outside, and they're 7mm thick. Now the old ones are 9mm thick, so this shell is 9mm, and these bearings are 7mm. So to keep them from going in, instead of using fancy dancy washers and stuff in there, you're going to need to use the internal bottom bracket spacer, which will be a 54mm spacer if you're using a 68mm bottom bracket shell, which is, I think, what pretty much all Echoes come with. So let me go make one of those up. Okay, so here's the Eclat, or however you pronounce that, BMX bottom bracket spacer kit that I'm using. A number of BMX companies make adapter kits for 24mm bottom brackets. This one is a mid bottom bracket that is black, and it adapts to a 24mm axle. So that's the important part, is the 24mm. They come in lots of different colors, and they will give you a wide variety of spacers that you will need. I think they come in a bag now. I haven't seen them in this tube in a while. But it's the same thing. Eclat makes them. Kink, I think, makes them. Profile used to make them. I think if you sweet talk them, you might can talk them out of some 24mm spacers or some 24mm cone washers, are really what you're after. But unfortunately, these kits, even though there is a Spanish one, it doesn't adapt to 24mm. So you'd have the right bearings, but you wouldn't have the right axle, unfortunately. So that's why you still need the Endura bearings. And these are the same bearings that go into a regular Shimano bottom bracket, a Hollowtech II bottom bracket, so they're just the 2437s. You can get them in ABEC3, ABEC5, ceramic, all kind of varieties depending on how much you want to pay. These are just the generic stainless steel, super awesome, last you forever, or 2 years, I guess, in my case. Yeah, they're like, $7 or something, so yeah, that's what I got. Just as an alternative, Racing Line makes some Spanish cups that will adapt this to a BB30, and they're there's no threads on these cups, so they're made for a Spanish bottom bracket, and you would just drive these in like this. You don't need a spacer in between because they sit against the outside. Press these into the frame, and then you can use BB30 cranks. I tried that, but the SRAM BB30 cranks that I tried it on, I needed like more spacers than I had, and finding 30mm spacers was kind of hard. None of the local bike shops really had what I needed, and I didn't want to pay too much for tiny little spacers. So I finally just gave up because I knew I had the parts for the Shimanos and I had Shimano cranks. So I just went with the Hollowtech IIs. But this is an option if you want. You can get these from Racing Line. I think there might be other companies that make Spanish to BB30 press fits, but that's an option. I didn't go that direction. Okay, so in your bottom bracket kit, it's going to have a bunch of spacers. Now this is a couple of kits put together, but basically these 24mm spacers are what you're after. they're different colors, but one is on the bottom bracket kits, there's one that's the non-drive side and one that's the drive side. I wanted these awesome cone washers, 24mm cone washers. So I actually got 2 of these kits to do one bottom bracket, just because I wanted 2 of these, because you need that much space because you're you're adapting to a Hollowtech II. But you can use the one that comes with it and just one on one side, one on the other. You just have to use more of the old school spacers because you need all this space. But yeah, this is what I was really after. Was these guys, and it comes in different colors, whatever. And so, but I'm using the silver ones on this particular bike. But yeah, you need these, and this is There's a couple of the bottom bracket spacers that come in the kit as well. This one is labeled B50, and the instructions tell you whatever. But you need to make up a 54. This is B50 right there. Maybe you can see that. You need to make up a 54mm spacer for in between the bearings in the bottom bracket, and I'm just gonna find, this is a 5, I think. I don't know. I got the calipers here so I can measure it. I'm gonna make up a 54 and then just use tape to hold those together, because all it's gonna do is it's just a spacer, and the axle goes through there and it'll live inside there, and just keep everything nice and tight and square. So I'm gonna make one of those up right now. Okay, so here's my bottom bracket spacer made up. I used the B50 and a 3mm and a 1mm, and then I just taped them all together with just regular old invisible tape. And it doesn't matter if this tape falls apart once it's in there, because the axle's going to be in there and hold it all together. I just need it to be the right space. And if you measure it out, that's 54mm. That's what I need to properly space it out for a 68mm bottom bracket. So let's go back to the bike. Okay, back to the bike now. We've got our 2 Endura bearings that we're going to drive in, and we've got our spacer that we made up. So it's going to sit inside the frame just like that, all beautiful style. Before you put them in, you want to use some grease to grease around the outside of this, or put it on here, because you want that to be nice and easy. And I made a really high-tech bottom bracket press tool. Ideally, you would want a 24mm bolt and nut, and then two big washers that can use to press this in. This is a 15/16 bolt, I think, which is close. You can put electrical tape around it to make up the difference in the size, if you want it to be exact, because obviously that's not quite right. But it works pretty good. Just kind of watch it as it's going in, make sure it doesn't get sideways, and you're gonna see. So yeah, okay, let's get started. Alright, so I'm gonna grease up the inside my bearing thing here. Now you can also put your bearings in the freezer overnight, and they will shrink an unbelievably tiny amount, but it will actually make them easier to get in once you've put them in the freezer overnight. I didn't do that because this one's had bearings go in and out of it a few times now, so it's not exactly up to tolerances anymore. But yeah, my wife always thinks it's funny when she finds bearings in the freezer. So spread out the grease so it'll go in nice and smooth. Alright. So now we put my handy dandy little tool, one bearing on one side. Get that to press again. And these bearings don't have a face. They're the same on both sides, so you can have either side facing out that you want. And don't forget your spacer. Spacer is very, very important. Stick the spacer in there. Stick the other bottom bracket, the other bearing in there, and then your washer, and then your nut, and then it's go time. You need 2 wrenches, and just start pulling them in. Now, even more ghetto, you could just use a mallet and just drive these in. Just again, use a piece of wood or something to protect them, because this time you are putting in something that you want to use for a while. So you do want to protect the bearings when you put them in if you're using a mallet this time. And I've done it that way before I decided to just go out and buy some bolts. And just kind of watch it to make sure these aren't going sideways. And just screw it in. And that's definitely going sideways. But it'll straighten itself out as it goes. Alright, I'm going to back it out and reset just a little bit, because it's kind of getting a little wonky. Hopefully I can get it to go a little bit better. Or I can show you both methods. Or I take my old handy dander 3-pound persuader. Get that lined up a little better. And then the other side's a little. Okay, now I go back to the press. And I can finish this up. And like I said, ideally you'd find a bolt that's the right size. I couldn't at my local hardware store, and the only ones I could find online were way too expensive. I've heard that you can get a 24mm threaded rod that's a lot cheaper than a bolt that's the right size, and then just, use the threaded rod to make up your own. But I didn't do that, and I've had this one for a while, so. Alright, and that's home free. And there you have it. Nice 24mm bottom, 24mm bearings in a Spanish press fit frame. So now you can put on lots of different, you can put on a GXP crankset, you can put on Shimano Hollowtech cranksets, the choice is yours. Okay, now for the next fun part. We need to figure out the amount of spacers that we need to go between the bearings and the cranks to set them out properly, because you don't want it to be hitting your chainstay. And of course, I made the mistake twice on 2 different bikes where I didn't get it far enough out and it hit the chainstay, so I have that nice little mark in the frame. Not on this side, luckily, but on the other side. So I have them already measured out, which is nice. And like I said, it's this beautiful cone washer that you really want out of the kit, or that I really wanted out of the kits, because it covers up most of the bearings. It keeps a little bit more of the grit out of it. And then this is the C5 from my kit. So it's a 5mm and a 2mm, I think, and then that cone washer, which comes out to 11mm. So my drive side, I have 11mm worth of spacers that spaces it out pretty darn nicely on a regular non-boosted Shimano Hollowtech II. Whoops. Right. So it's going to be in there like that. And then you stick this on there, make sure it's nice and clean, because this is going to live in your frame for a long time. And there you go. I've got at least 4 or 5mm of space in there, because when you're really putting the power to it, these cranks will flex a little bit, and you can hit your frame if they're too close. So don't run too tight of tolerances in here. So with 11mm of spacers that I was running in here, it gives you a nice bit of clearance here, and I haven't hit the frame on this one, so I'm calling that good. Now you just have to do the other side. Okay, and on the non-drive side, I have, looks like 13, 10, 11, 12, 13 millimeters of spacers. And like I said, I used 2 of those kits, so I got 2 of these beautiful cone washers, cone spacers. It comes with a different kind for the BMX, which you can use, and it'll work out. And I think you can get away with just using 1 kit, but anyway, yeah, there's 13 millimeters of spacers. Stick that on there. Stick on your other crank arm. Use Shimano's funky little thing. Screw that on there. Boom. There you go. Now you got your cranks. I didn't put the chain on, so I gotta undo this and do it again. Hold on. Okay, so this time I did it with the chain on. Now you use Shimano's little handy dandy plastic, whatever they call that. Screw it in, and it's plastic, so it doesn't really matter if you over tighten it, because you're gonna strip the plastic before you strip the spindle, which is great. Make sure that's nice and tight, and there you go. Just tighten up your crank bolts, and these are pinch bolts, so tighten this one a little bit, and then tighten the other one, and then tighten this one, tighten that one, tighten this, tighten that one. You don't want to do one all the way and then the other one all the way, because it'll squeeze itself off the axle a little bit. So do one, then the other, one, then the other, then the other, then the other, until they're nice and tight. And it says like 6 Newton meters or something, but I don't know. I just usually make those really tight. And there you go. You've defeated ISIS. No more ISIS bottom bracket. Nice Hollowtech II, Shimano or GXP, whatever you want to run on here. And there you go. And that should last you for a nice long while. Okay, I'll say just a little bit about these cranks. These are the newer Shimano XT 2x crank set. And I picked the 2x because it gives you the inner bolt holes and the outer bolt holes. And the outer bolt holes you can obviously run a bash ring. This is just a piece of aluminum that I got off of eBay. It's like 4mm, I think, that I just cut with a saber saw, or not a saber saw, a jigsaw to the right size, and then drilled some holes in it, because everything should have holes in it. And obviously it's been used once or twice. But the nice thing about this double crank set from Shimano, I think there's an SLX as well that's the same, but it's 96 and 64 on your BCD. And the 96 is nice because it's a lot closer to the outside of a 22 tooth chain ring. On the 104s that you get more standard, it's just farther out, and that's just, you don't need it, and you're going to hit it more often because it's farther out, and blah blah blah. And I didn't cut off these tabs to make it lighter, just because, I don't know, maybe one day I'll want to run these as an actual 2x again. I don't know, or maybe a full ring. I don't know, whatever. And you can see there's some marks where I didn't get it right a couple of times, and everything was a little bit too close, and I ate some of my yoke a little bit. But now it's nice. If you buy a chain ring, I'd recommend a steel chain ring and not an aluminum, because they're really thin if you get the chain ring. But if you get a steel middle chain ring that's 96 BCD, the 30 tooth will basically give you this, and you just cut the teeth off of it and then cut it there. Or if you just want the full ring, obviously that'll work too. But if you just want the quarter, a 30 tooth is about as small as you can get in the 96 BCD measurement. And I have that on another bike that I did. But since this one was asymmetrical and you have to find those weird cranks, it's like $30 for one of those chain rings. And this piece of aluminum was like $4. So that was pretty easy math, in my opinion. So there you go. XT 2x crank set. I don't know, it's the M750, or no, this is a FC M8000 right there. Thank you, Shimano, for printing that on there. FC M8000, which is just the modern XT with the ASIM chain rings. And sadly, there are no 22 tooth stainless steel asymmetrical chain rings. So I had some custom made, and they're not here yet. But I have some stainless steel 22 tooth asymmetrical chain rings coming, because the aluminums just get eaten away too much, and I have a really expensive cog in the back that's also stainless steel that I don't like to lose whenever the chain gets out of alignment, and I thought I was changing the chain often enough. Anyway, yeah, there you go. Go out and ride.